Okay, so we are just at the over the hour. I'm going to get us started today and get us going. I see we still have folks introducing themselves in the chat. That's great. Um, Let me make sure I've got my screen set up. Okay, so. A little bit of housekeeping. This call is going to be recorded. We are going to send a follow-up after each webinar that we host, and you'll have access to the slides. So any information I share here, you're able to access, you will be able to access on your own. So if there's anything confusing, just kind of know that you'll have the information on your own. We'll have a Q&A towards the end of the call. This is a webinar, so there's a Q&A button just at the bottom of your screen. If you have any reactions to what I'm sharing, if you have any questions you'd like me to expand on, feel free to put that in the Q&A box. Thankfully, I have another TJT member on this call who can monitor the chat, but we'll be a little bit busy, and our preference is that you put your questions in the Q&A so nothing gets lost if the chat becomes active for whatever reason. So use the Q&A box if you can. And as you all have already done, you introduced yourself. So as folks join, they'll get the cue to do that as well. So please look at the chat and see who is joining us and where they're coming from. So I'll be your speaker today. My name is Jane Demobi. I'm a staff attorney at Tennessee Justice Center. I've been at the organization for just over 2 years, and in that time, I've been involved with our paid family caregiving initiative as part of the broader disability and aging policy TJC does. We have an independence team that works on access to Medicaid for people with disabilities and for older adults who are in nursing homes, for example. So that's how a lot of you are here. You're part of our independence community and you get these emails. And so all the things that I shared today, I know you all have been hearing a little bit about through our emails, but this is kind of our big update, and I'm really excited to share with you all and bring new folks up to speed and make sure that folks who have been in this fight for a while get that refresher that they need. So our agenda today, we have an hour for this call, and in that time, I'll be giving you all a background on home care in Tennessee, just as a broader context of why paying family caregivers becomes such a massive conversation. We'll talk about the Paying Family Caregivers campaign here in Tennessee, which is why you're all here. Policy updates as well, which is also why you're all here. And finally, talk about next steps. TJC is a nonprofit law firm and advocacy organization, so we engage in things like lobbying, litigation, and grassroots education. And our work is nonpartisan, but a lot of what we'll be sharing with you today are advocacy opportunities. So getting involved with us and the work that we're doing to make a change, not only just in the paid family caregiver initiative, but in the broader disability justice world here in Tennessee. So stay tuned for some next steps, how to stay active, how to stay engaged, and I'm sure you all will have quite a lot to contribute. So let's start off with home care in Tennessee. When we're talking about home care, we're referring to healthcare that's provided for people who live in the home. There's a long history of why home care is so important, not only in Tennessee, but all around the country. And that is because it is a right for people to have access to comparable care in their community rather than being forced to be institutionalized. So we know here in Tennessee, if you have TennCare health insurance, you can get home care as an offering. So you can have your services covered in the home. So the person who's getting the services lives in the home, and there's, for example, a home health aide or a nurse that comes to the home. There has to be a finding of medical necessity to allow this, and medical necessity is a legal standard that you hear all the time in TennCare that basically says that both the healthcare provider and TennCare, the agency that's actually authorizing the services, agree that it is necessary for someone to receive a certain level of healthcare services. So that medical necessity is kind of what triggers this conversation. So yeah, again, you can get nursing services, you can get home health aid or other personal care services, really whatever it takes to keep you able to kind of carry out your activities of daily living. So the number of hours people receive does tend to be capped. So that is where a lot of the family caregiving conversation starts. So maybe someone's only authorized for 15 hours a week. The family member will usually step up and provide an additional number of hours because just because a certain number of hours are authorized doesn't always mean that's the need. So that cap is pretty can be the reason that a lot of family members step in. If you were a child on Medicaid, you can get more hours. You can actually push the cap if, again, it's medically necessary. And that's just kind of a showing that you have, as a family, as a 10 care enrollee, you make to the agency. So a lot of times there's that cap, and there's a little bit of a tug of war about how many hours someone can get. And because people tend to need more hours than they are authorized for. But all in all, yes, it's kind of a part of the home care system, and it all comes from the medical necessity finding. How 10 care determines medical necessity and how a family might decide might view medical necessity could be very different. But overall, that's the basis. So when we're talking about home care, it's not something that just anybody on 10 care is able to access. You'll have to be in these four programs here. So you all might be familiar with these, but if you're not, they are choices, employment and community first choices, ECF choices, HCB, the 1915 waivers, and the Katie Beckett waiver. All of these are really critical supports for people with disabilities. They make up the broader what's called the Long-Term Services and Supports LTSS program here in Tennessee through TennCare. So if someone is over 65 or an adult, they have a certain level of a physical disability, they can be enrolled on choices. If they have an intellectual or developmental disability, that's when they get grouped into ECF choices, which has different groups. Each group on ECF choices has a different set of requirements and opportunities and resources. So each one of these four buckets constitutes a world in of itself. If you're on the 1915 C waiver, that's someone who has intellectual or developmental disabilities. That's someone who could qualify for placement in a facility, in a care facility, but can't is able to receive those services at home. You can imagine why that is where family caregiving can be particularly important. And then Katie Beckett, also for people with disabilities, but specifically for children. And this kind of has to do with complex medical needs and family income as well. So if you have any questions about these programs, we can talk about them later, but this is just the world that you have to be in to even be eligible for home care. So why is home care so important? Home care is important because home care services are important because in Tennessee because Tennessee is just not ranking very highly. So um, AARP runs an annual long-term services and support scorecard. So I just explained like those programs we just talked about are part of the LTSS system broadly. So this AARP is going through state by state and analyzing how well are states doing in running these programs, how much in terms of access to resources, in terms of overall well-being, how are families and the clients, the people who are on these programs, how are they doing? And if you look at how Tennessee administers its program, frankly, we are just in the lowest tier. And that's not the worst thing. It's just something to pay attention to and use as a basis for improvement. So Tennessee is ranked in tier five. As of 2023, was ranked in tier five. There hasn't been a new ranking since 2023. So we're just looking at this for now. We hope in future evaluations, Tennessee is ranked higher, but this is kind of a wake-up call, right? It's part of the narrative for why we're all here today. And if the broader LTSS system isn't doing the best for families, that's for the enrollees, for the person who actually has a disability and has that need, that's where the family comes in. So we see individuals, family members are picking up the slack where maybe the state isn't quite meeting the standard. So again, this is just kind of an understanding of the background. Things are not looking so great. At least they weren't as of late 2023 when this was released. So it's definitely something to consider. And now let's talk a little bit about who is a family caregiver. So, a family caregiver is or can be any one of us. I think this quote here is one that I really hold on to, which is that there are only four kinds of people in the world: those who have been caregivers, those who are currently caregivers, those who will be caregivers, and those who will need caregivers. Because really, it's just a factor of time until whether you're responsible for taking care of a parent, or maybe you are taking care of a child, or someone needs to take care of you. It can be temporary, it can be permanent, but caregiving is kind of part of the framework. And we'll talk about this later, but there's an aging population in the United States, and that kind of has pushed people to into a position of caring for their older family members. So it's a reality that many people are familiar with. In fact, 1 in 5 people nationwide are familiar with caregiving, or they serve as caregivers. So it's safe to say that this is a very common narrative. Did your family member have to move? Did your older parent have to move in with you? Um, did you have to redesign your home to accommodate a child with disabilities? We're all kind of making accommodations here and there to make sure that our family members are able to be in their community, which that can look like living with us in some cases. So yeah, that's where family caregiving comes in. It's a very common part of people's story, and um, kind of sets up the picture today. So yeah, going back a little bit, or delving in a little bit on home care. Like I was just saying, family members play a vital role in our healthcare system as caregivers for older adults and folks with disabilities in our communities. They often carry out intense medical or nursing tasks and devote many hours to caregiving. This is really the bulk of it. There are people who are administering medication, they're cleaning out trachs and vents. I mean, there's a lot that they're uh, teaching themselves to do. They're building these skills so that they can be the best uh, person when their family member needs it. And we'll talk about this. Well, this is the subject of today's call. Uh, but it's a huge burden. It's a huge burden that people are bearing on top of other obligations. So maybe a full-time job, maybe school, maybe other responsibilities. And there's just not enough time in the day to meet both your work and day-to-day and caregiving obligations. That's where this campaign comes in. And there's also this idea that when there's resistance to paying family caregivers and to compensating them for the time that they put in, there's this idea that, oh, well, you would have done that anyway. Like you were going to provide that care for free to your family member. So why would we pay you for it? And it just doesn't understand the level of commitment that people are putting into being caregivers to their family members. So there are a lot of benefits to having a family caregiver, whether it's whether a family member is your sole caregiver, or in addition to that home care that I was talking about earlier, the home care that Tenacare provides. So having a family caregiver delays or prevents the need for nursing home care or care in a facility. This is because, again, we see that when people are able to receive care in their home or in their own communities, that means that they don't have to be institutionalized. That means that they can, there's someone who is filling in the gaps in care that a nurse might not be able to, that would have otherwise pushed them to being placed in a nursing home or in another care facility. So either delaying or preventing, and a lot of people are happier when they're in their home and they get to see the person that they grew up with, and they get to see their family members, and it's just that's their community, right? It decreases healthcare utilization costs like ER visits. In a lot of cases, family caregivers are the number one people that are responding in emergencies, and they're kind of filling in that critical time before maybe EMTs arrive. We'll talk about this in rural areas where it's like very, very prevalent. but it is if a family member in the home can respond to an urgent situation, it does decrease the ER visits. It saves the state dollars for costly service in a facility. It is cheaper for the state to provide in-home care than it is to provide nursing or to provide facility care in a lot of cases, not every case. So there are instances where the state is actually saving money if they were to compensate caregivers in the home rather than ship someone off to be in a facility. There's an established relationship, which I think makes established relationship, which I think we can all agree makes things like administering medication, understanding people's needs, responding to urgent situations, all of that is just more easily facilitated because it's done by a family member who understands the person in front of them. And there's an overall improvement in quality of life for the person who's being supported, which is just ties into everything I was just saying. They're just generally happier to be in the home and to be with people that they're familiar with. But despite all the benefits, family caregiving comes with its own struggles. There are physical costs. These are, again, when people are administering medication and doing other demanding tasks like moving people, there are physical costs. There are emotional costs. It is really um, uh, time, not only for the time reasons, it is really stressful, essentially, is a simple word to manage the care for another person while managing care for yourself. And so what we see quite regularly is people put their own needs aside, and that just causes them to kind of sink into mental health issues because they're not able to um, take care of themselves fully and they prioritize taking care of others and their financial costs as well. Family caregivers, because in Tennessee, they tend not to be recognized as real workers for the work that they're doing. They incur a lot of financial costs, out of pocket expenses that are part of the caregiving, um, are part of meeting the need for caregiving. So digging into the economic impacts of caregiving, because again, it is a demanding job. Families report having out-of-pocket caregiving costs. They take on debts. They are not really able to save, or if they have saved, they've used up their savings to meet the needs of their family member. They leave bills unpaid or they pay those bills late. They borrow money from family and friends. And the largest impact, the much more sustained impact, is how they approach a paid employment. So they might quit jobs more frequently and change jobs more frequently because they realize that whatever the demands of the job, they can't balance that with taking care of their family members. They reduce their hours, which limits how much money is coming into the household, or they take more hours on at multiple jobs to meet their to make ends meet financially. And what that results in is even less time to take care of themselves, because they're going to just give their all to taking care of their family members. And they might even be fired because they have emergencies that pop up that take them away from the workplace. And again, makes it hard to find a job because then it seems like you're unreliable, but really you just have too much on your plate. So that's the paid family caregiving structure. Again, we have a Q&A section where hopefully I can hear from you all about if you've worked within this program and you know about this campaign. So now let's talk a little bit about the policy. So I think you're all able to react. If you can folks react if you are aware of the Freedom from Family Caregiving Act? So this is a bill, this is a legislative win. It is okay, I see some folks are reacting and it's all positive. So HB 712 or SB 1178 is the bill that would prohibit TennCare from creating policies that discriminate against family caregivers, and the ability for them to be hired for the work that they do. So the structure for family caregiving is what provider agencies throughout the state that work with TennCare find nurses and aides and others who will go to the home and take care of the individual that needs support. what has happened historically was TennCare discouraging uh, family members from being hired by these, either explicitly prohibiting or discouraging these family members from being hired by the provider agencies, whether they had the official skills or not. So this bill takes away the restrictions that were previously in place, preventing family members from being caregivers. So it now allows local provider agencies to hire family members as direct support workers. And that is a huge, huge benefit for, again, the community of family caregivers. So TennCare is now required to compile and publicly share procedures for provider agencies to hire and supervise family caregivers. So the ultimate hiring is done by providers, and we'll talk about what that looks like. The ultimate hiring is done by provider agencies. So you, as a family member, as an individual, you are going to be working with them, but TennCare is responsible for broadly summarizing the opportunities across provider agencies. That's what this bill requires. How much progress TennCare has made with that is remains to be seen. That's not something that's moving as quickly as we would like, but we do know that provider agencies are working with families. Families are being hired as paid caregivers, and there's more to come. But this just passed in 2025, so we're only about 6 months from success in that regard, and so there's a lot that is remains to be seen. It creates a reliable pathway for a family member to be paid for providing care to a person with a disability. Notice I said pathway. It's not exactly a program. So what's interesting about this, what this bill does and what's happening in Tennessee compared to other states is it's not like we have a paid family caregiving program with robust supports that someone can enroll in and then kind of understand what's expected of them and what opportunities they have. This is just clearing a path to hopefully having a much more comprehensive program in the future. So what this bill does, it says TennCare cannot restrict, cannot prohibit families from taking advantage of an opportunity to get paid by a provider. That's a roundabout way of saying it opens a door, but it doesn't kind of create a comprehensive set of protections for family caregivers like we have in other states. Other states have much more robust programs, and Tennessee's just getting there, but this is a great first step. It's part one of a two-part effort to create much more opportunities for family caregivers, especially around developing their skills. So if you have to be CPR certified or learn a certain procedure to make sure that you're administering medication properly, that should be that's something that can be incorporated into a future program and can be paid for, so families aren't paying out of pocket to learn those skills. So there's a lot in that part too, where family members um, can have more opportunities to be qualified caregivers and to actually get hired and use their skills appropriately. So look forward to that. But part one is this bill has passed, and that is through the work of a huge coalition, but a lot of this information is from the Tennessee Disability Coalition's 2025 policy priorities. So they are, in a lot of ways, the legislative champion of this bill. And I think we have a couple folks from TPC on the call, but just wanted to highlight their work in getting this to passage and all of your work too as supporters. So, um, the great news is that the bill passed and that door is open. The bad news is there are a couple obstacles, and that's where TJC comes in and and Family Voices of Tennessee and some other partners. So, although the bill passed and there's a lot of celebration there, there was an agency amendment an agency amendment from the Department of Disability and Aging, DDA, that changed the language of the bill as it relates to conservators specifically. So there are a lot of family arrangements that might occur if somebody has a disability. One of them is a conservatorship. So that is where um, an individual can make decisions on behalf of the person with disabilities, and that is actually created through a court order. So conservatorship it has very strict requirements. You usually need a lawyer to understand and amend it. And the bill treats it separately than other family and disability relationships. So the change that was created now permits so if you're a conservator, so which means you have decision-making authority ordered by the court. If you have that authority over someone who has a disability, you can only be hired as a family caregiver if your conservatorship agreement explicitly permits it. This was not the intent when the bill was created because, as I'll explain, that creates a huge burden for families. Because now, if you have a conservatorship agreement, you have to go and amend that agreement so that it explicitly permits you to be paid as a family caregiver. That is difficult. Conservatorship agreements are, like I said, they're court orders, so any amendments have to go through a court. Now you're talking about confusion with court procedures, maybe having to hire a lawyer, and figuring out what the right language is. It's just a barrier for families. It wasn't intended as part of the bill's package, but it was an amendment that had to be made if it was going to get passed. And so now our role and the goal of this webinar, and many of our partner groups have done this already, is to inform families who might have a conservatorship how they should go about making those amendments if they find that that's an obstacle. So resources for families, there are quite a few. The first one that we'll share out to the folks on this call is from the Disability Coalition and Family Voices. It's a two-page flyer that explains how you might be able to get paid to care for your child with a disability. So it explains the law that passed. It explains what it does and does not do. It explains who can be hired, so what your qualifications, not qualifications, but what you need to do to get hired, what the options are if you're a conservator, which is, like I said, a very specific set of rules for an individual. It explains things like background checks, trainings you might need, and other requirements that you need to complete before or during the paid family caregiving relationship. It tells you how to find a provider agency, how to find information from TennCare, your MCO, or your provider agency that you need to know if you're going to actually do this. And of course, it tells you where to go for help. So both for on the advocate side, so which organizations can answer your questions, and also which state agencies can answer your questions. So this is a great resource. It's the first one that a starting point for anyone who wants to understand what is coming in the paid family caregiving world that we hope, well, not hope, we know Tennessee is entering. So you'll all receive this if you don't already have it. And then the bulk of the resources that families need at this moment really centers around conservatorship agreements, and that's where TJC is able to help. So, like I said, TJC is a law firm as part of being an advocacy organization. I'm a staff attorney. We have other attorneys here. We open cases for folks who are using the broader LTSS services, ECF choices, 1915C, and so on. So we are able to explain to people what the obstacle they might be facing is with the conservatorship agreement, and explain to them what procedures they might be facing if they want to make those changes. We've partnered with, again, the Disability Coalition, Family Voices, and others to share out this information, but as I'll explain, we want to make this available to as many people as possible. So please reach out if you want to know more. So what procedure you have to go through to amend your conservatorship agreement depends on which county you live in. So all 95 counties have different courts and different procedures. And what we went through at TJC was to call each county clerk's office and figure out what the process was for each of those counties. So we can tell you that as of 2025, what process you have to go through to amend your document. So again, like I said, you might have to reach out to the court to amend the you'll have to reach out to the court to amend the conservatorship agreement. And you might need a lawyer, you might not need a lawyer, they might have a template for you, they might not have a template for you. And it just cuts down a lot of that work, the confusion. Courts can be very intimidating for people, so this is just one way to hopefully ease that burden that is created by the language of the bill. So we have first a letter template for families that are inquiring. So if you want to reach out to the court clerk and ask what the conservatorship amendment rules are, process might be, and what the court rules are, we have a letter template for you to do that. We did all the work of explaining what you might need. You can always supplement that with personal details, but we have a template that you can send to any court depending on the county that you live in. And then we have a survey of all 95 counties with the contact information for the court clerk, which you'll need to make any changes or take any next steps. We have that contact information and three key pieces of information. The first is whether a motion is required. A motion is something you have to file with the court, and that is exactly why people get intimidated because they feel like they don't know how to draft a motion, they need a lawyer, and so on and so forth. So you'll understand whether a motion is or isn't required in that county, whether you need a lawyer, you have to pay for a lawyer, or you can, or whether you can do that yourself, which is called pro se, and whether a template amendment is provided for you to actually jump into just making that change, or if you have to figure out the language on your own. It looks something like this. It's a table that lists all the different counties. So in it, these are three real examples. So in Carroll County, for example, you do have to go by motion in front of a judge to amend your conservatorship agreement if you want to get paid to be a family caregiver. So the rule says you can only be paid as a family caregiver if the conservatorship agreement explicitly permits it. So now you have to rewrite a portion of the agreement to explicitly permit it, right? So in Carroll County, you have to go by motion in front of a judge. You cannot do it pro se. So pro se is a way to say like you're doing something without a lawyer. Pro se is not allowed in Carroll County. You need a lawyer. And they don't provide a form language for you to amend that your conservatorship agreement. So that is where a lawyer comes in. The lawyer would draft that language. And we do have some resources about the form language as well. Dyer County, you'll have the name and number, but again, a motion is required to amend the conservatorship agreement, but you can do it per se. So you don't need a lawyer. You can, on your own, draft a motion to amend, rewrite that amendment, and then submit it to a judge. We have a couple folks whose hands are raised. Just a second. Okay, I will pivot over to hand raise after my next sentence. And then Shelby County, you do not need a motion, which is great. So you can make that amendment and you can do that pro se. But again, there's no form language offered. So you'll have to get the accurate language yourself. We have worked with the Office of the Conservator to figure out the best template language for families, and that's information that we'll be providing to you all as well as part of the resources. So I'm going to pause here. I see a couple people have their hand raised, and I don't know if you all are able to come off mute, but if you are, let me know or put your question in the chat or in the Q&A feature. Sorry. I was unmuted. Sorry. I was just saying there was someone who also had a hand up, but if I missed you, please put your question in the Q&A and we'll get to it shortly. We're almost done and I'll just have to go through a couple more slides before the Q&A. The Disability Coalition and a broader group, including TJC, are working with families to identify obstacles in paid family caregiving. So that's what they've experienced already in trying to get paid, what the providers are telling them, what TennCare is telling them. And it's been really instructive. So there have been a couple of surveys sent to individual family members as well as provider agencies just to learn what's working, what's not working. There is a little bit of what we're hearing from families is that there's a lot of confusion about eligibility. So only Tennesseans with disabilities who are already enrolled in a Medicaid program that offers home care can be paid. So this might be confusing for some people, which is why I emphasized earlier, there are only those four programs that have uh, that are in the home care bucket that authorize that will eventually authorize paid family caregiving. And for ECF choices, for example, there are seven groups and maybe eight, but each group is slightly different. And so not every single ECF choices group allows paid family caregiving. So people might have to learn on a case by case basis that, hey, I do help my family member that has a disability, but it's not in the category of home care that is recognized by this program. So that is as we are mapping out what is and isn't working as well as families are telling us. So that is definitely a learning process. Jackie, I see your hand is raised. When we get to the Q&A, can you re-raise your hand so that you can speak, or you can put your question in the Q&A. Um, They can only be hired by the provider agency, not consumer direction. Consumer direction is a completely separate program of TennCare. It's not a paid family caregiving program. It functions completely differently, and it is a way that, or if you're trying to get hired through the provider agency, it's more direct than through consumer direction. It's up to the agency if they want to hire you. Some family members have been hired, others haven't. And it's seeming like it's kind of like applying to a job. You might get it, you might not, which causes some confusion for different family members. Um, I'm seeing some things in the chat that I'm definitely going to focus on in a little bit. Um, there's a big question that families have around something as very critical as CPR certification. So if you want to develop that skill so that you can be a qualified family caregiver, um, maybe you're providing other things, but you haven't provided CPR yet. Who pays for that and other requirements to be hired as a caregiver right now? Not TennCare and not the provider agency. So that's part of that part two push to expand the actual opportunities for someone who's a caregiver so that they don't have to maybe take on these out-of-pocket expenses. Again, we're learning a little bit as we go along. Um, this is a very clear, it's become a very case by case basis because kind of every family situation is different. And some people are giving feedback. Tennessee is not operating like other states. There's no programs, just an employment possibility. And um, this is a major uh, point of feedback, which is that if you hear about family caregiving in other states, you might feel like, oh, this is a great option. I want to really participate in this. And then in Tennessee, it just operates very differently than in other states. But we have some success stories. Folks from the Disability Coalition shared that there are a few parents of Katie Beckett children who have been paid for their family caregiving, and it's the first time they've been able to spend those wraparound benefits. And I think we see that as a huge win again because Katie Beckett is for children, and so in a lot of cases, by definition, they're living in the household, and so the parents already have a major caretaking responsibility for those kids, and so just to have it built in is makes things very seamless for those family members. And as I said, referred to earlier, we're in a position to monitor how successful this program is at connecting family caregivers to provider agencies and getting them paid. Right now, we're learning a lot as people are going through the process we're learning from their hurdles as they go through the process, and we'll see what comes up next. So, what comes up next? Looking ahead to 2026, the legislative session is going to be about garnering support and building kind of the standard um, for a much more structured and comprehensive paid family caregiving program. So I'll keep using my kind of metaphor. The door is open to family members being paid for their caregiving, and that's great if the provider agency hires them. But there are some obstacles. Some folks are not the provider agency does not um, provide compensation for the skills they might need for that caregiving. Or there might be other skills required to participate in family caregiving. So yeah, the 2025 bill, this year's bill, is just the beginning of the work that we're doing here, and it's making it explicitly legal and acceptable for provider agencies to hire and pay family caregivers. So part two is really going to be where that program takes shape. And to do that, we need your voice, we need your feedback, and we're going to use this call and future calls to shape what we're asking for the actual program. So I'm seeing in the chat, some people are saying that they are getting paid. Some people are saying a provider agency does pay for skill certification, some might not. So like using those discrepancies as data, and then your stories to advocate for more improvements will be critical in 2026 and moving forward. So it's been a big year. 2025 has been a big year for paid family caregiving. But there's a lot more to come, and we hope that you all use this opportunity to stay involved in the fight, whether you are a partner of TJC, Family Voices, Disability Coalition, or all three. We really need your input to kind of push the advocacy forward. At this point, I'm going to work through the Q&A and review the chat, which I hope will get us through. Yeah, there are quite a few questions. Will get us through everything that people are asking about, and hopefully you all can share your thoughts as well. I did not mean to stop sharing my screen, so let's go back to that and get the Q&A up. So someone's asking, don't you have to have a nursing license to actually be paid? I think if I can't say for sure, we've seen a case where someone did have a nursing license, but still was not authorized to be a paid family caregiver. So I'm not sure if it's an actual requirement. If you've seen that rule written down anywhere, please comment in the chat and share that. This is an anonymous question. Please give us more information, but can't say for sure if you have a nursing license. Someone's asking, okay, so we have an anonymous attendee that's interested in going through the process to be the designated caregiver. And I'm gonna just let them know to reach out to me at directly so we can better understand their specific case. We have someone asking, is there a way for family caregivers to be paid for RN, LPN, RN level of care if the caregiver does not have that certification? Best as I understand it, that is going to be at a provider agency level. I couldn't answer for certain right now. Um, but the law itself does not create any certification requirements. It's much more about requiring 10 care to summarize the rules that different provider agencies use, and then that sets the attention on provider agencies to actually make their rules clear. So if you're in a position to be a family caregiver, you'd have to reach out to your provider agency and ask what they require. Someone's asking, how do we get the Family Voices Guide? Great question. It's going to be sent out to you in the email follow-up. We usually send those out within 24 hours, but definitely this week you'll have that full document to review on your own. Someone's asking, would it be possible to get information on the conservatorship amendment procedures in a form suitable for sharing on social media? I think letting folks know that TJC can offer this help would be huge. That is great. I am not a social media person, but I will double check on that. I think we are planning to publish it as a PDF and a blog post, which you can share on social media, either on the grid or as a post or something like that. Um, so I think that's definitely doable, but if you want it to be even more interactive, we've done reels in the past, we've done lives. So I've done lives in partnership with other organizations, so we can make it as direct and needed as possible in the way that people need it as possible. But yeah, we'll definitely have it on the website to start. For DDH 2026, how can we prepare to advocate for part two of paid family caregiving? So that's a great question. I have not scanned all the participants here because I've had quite a few things going on. But if anybody from the Disability Coalition is on this call, please, well, you'll have a couple minutes to talk about what advocacy looks like in 2026. Otherwise, what I can say is please, I linked this in the slide. Please keep up with the Disability Coalition's Day on the Hill or listserv because they announce everything to do with Day on the Hill. The year is winding down. I know that has a lot of people just having less time than usual. So um, I would say just be a part of their community to get the most updates. But a lot of times it is really just keeping the information going, making sure you have a coalition, being ready to tell your story, and share whatever resources that they put out. There are quite a few answers or questions in the chat, so um, I will get to that next. So I've got someone saying our guardianship and conservatorship is filed in South Dakota. Will we have to return to South Dakota to update the paperwork, or can we amend in Tennessee? You will have to reach out to um, your county clerk and ask them if they would even allow you to amend that in a different state's court. I think you should definitely go directly to your county clerk. So once we share this out, or you can reach out to us directly with the county information, I would say reach out first before, because it's going to depend. Because a lot of the ability to get paid by the provider depends on where you live. So you're just going to have to start in your area. Um, do you have a list of providers to share with us? We don't have a list of TGC doesn't have a list of providers, but we can put together some of the information we've gotten about what different providers offer. It might not be every single provider in the state, but it could be the ones that are participating in the general paid family caregiving campaign. And I think that will be a good start, even though it won't be every single provider. But I can look into that. So this is an example of an obstacle that someone has shared, which is that now the obstacle is coming from the medical provider who's not authorizing the family member to become a paid family caregiver. This was not on the slide. It's not something I was immediately aware of, but we're going to add it to the list and we'll see what we can do about that in terms of responding to obstacles from the doctor, because you're not the only, there's one person has asked about this so far, but I think I saw another question. How can we get the list of agencies that have worked under Katie Beckett? That will be a research question, but if that's something you're interested in, I have my email at the end of the slide and I'll be able to follow up with you if that's possible. Someone's asking, would you need an attorney to add someone as a conservator? The answer is yes. That kind of conservatorship amendment, that's not amending the language in this case. That is changing the nature of the conservatorship. So you can expect to need an attorney for that. So we have someone saying families ask how they can be designated as a caregiver for an elderly family member and be paid for this. Should I just send them to AAAD? I think that's a good first step. You definitely, I think having the AAAD as the first point of contact, and then also, or to DDA in general, and then also having information about what their if there's any kind of conservatorship or other kind of power of attorney, whatever the agreements are, having that in your back pocket, because that can affect how each of these individuals interact with the agency, because the agency won't talk to you if you are not the authorized individual, whether that is as simple as a 10 care author rep, a power of attorney, a conservatorship, and so on and so forth. So yes, reach out to the agency, but be prepared to follow up with the appropriate information. Otherwise, you just go two steps forward, one step back. Um, so we have someone in Knoxville saying that the nursing license The nursing license is required for someone for their daughter who has a trach and a G tube, and per 10 care, yeah, so that's a requirement. So that's true in Knoxville. So person asking earlier whether a nursing license is required, there is some information here that it might be. So I would definitely keep that in mind. I can't say it's an absolute yes, but we have some folks weighing in the chat. So the community is saying a nursing license is required. Is this something grandparents could do if they have emergency custody of a 5-year-old on SSI for severe ADHD and ODD? So if that child is not enrolled in one of those 4 programs that I shared earlier, choices, ECF choices, Katie Beckett, or a 1915C waiver, and home care isn't an authorized option for that child, then family caregiving is not gonna the paid family caregiving process is not gonna be for you. So this is where the person asking this question might be the person who's taking care of a child and providing family caregiving, but the issue becomes you're not in the world of programs that make you eligible for home care and paid family caregiving. So unfortunately, just based on what we know so far, that is not the case. But again, that's just kind of the limits here in Tennessee. So thank you all for participating in our Q&A section. I try to get to everyone. If I didn't, again, my contact information is here. Reach out to me directly, and us at TJC will work with you. The goal of this was to collect obstacles and experiences from family members, and I think we did just that. We have those resources for you all that will be sent out in a follow-up email this week, and so please be patient with us as we get that information to you. If there are ways that you use this information, please let us know, and otherwise, just let us know your story with family caregiving and join us in our advocacy efforts next year. So thank you all for joining this update webinar, and my hope is that we'll have some even more great information for you following the 2026 session. So again, my contact information is here. Reach out to me if you need to, and we'll be following up with you all over email. Thanks again.